The real problem with Path of Exile 2's endgame is player incentives, and more specifically, player incentives in regards to both difficulty and reward. In my opinion, this is a big core design challenge that is done quite poorly in Path of Exile 2's endgame. It needs to be fixed in order to keep the endgame healthy and replayable in the long term. Most of the discourse around PoE 2's difficulty has been about it being too hard, or Souls-like, which I vehemently disagree with. PoE 2 peaks in difficulty in Act 2 of the campaign. From then on out, the game just gets easier and easier. We're at the point now where the only distinguishing factor from PoE 1 builds and PoE 2 builds is the lack of a super powerful movement skill. Come tier 15 maps, and you realize that in terms of difficulty, that's about the maximum you're really able to obtain. If you have a character that can complete tier 15 maps easily, they can also probably clear tier 16 or tier 17 or even tier 18 maps, as they really aren't too much different. So then, if this is the cap of difficulty from then on out, what scales is not difficulty, but only reward. Player power easily clears tier 15 maps with hundreds of builds right now. So the question becomes, how can a player continue their character journey past tier 15 maps? The answer is speed clearing. So many different facets of PoE 2's endgame right now promote speed clearing over all else, and I'll try to go through as many as I can. Note that I'm not against speed clearing totally, I enjoy it myself. I love doing it in PoE 1 and 2, but what I really have a problem with is the way you're pigeonholed into doing it currently in PoE 2. Firstly, as I mentioned before, the difficulty is far too low. When difficulty is too low in the endgame, skill diversity is drastically damaged. Instead of players using the dynamic combos to solve the problems in front of them and deal large amounts of damage, the only thing that matters is using the skill with the highest coverage and the lowest cast time. Monster health doesn't scale very well into tier 15 maps from tier 1 maps. You see Spark and why it's the most dominant user of Archmage, and it's for exactly this reason. There are so many cool skills in the game that just cannot get used because they deal too much damage. You don't need that damage, what you need is speed. Now I'm all for not having a super high baseline difficulty, as to keep the accessibility for multiple builds in the endgame viable. But there has to be a suitable reward for increasing the difficulty past that baseline, than economic cost to begin with. For example, I thought that tier 17s in PoE 1 were awful. They raised the perceived baseline difficulty to them as the standard, which hurts build diversity. But certain scarabs that heavily raise difficulty and reward, such as the one that increased the toughness of unique mobs based on divination cards, are seen as an optional way to increase difficulty, and in my opinion, the right direction to go in. Player agency needs to be front and center in regards to difficulty scaling. Towers are one of the best ways currently to make maps more rewarding, but they do not increase difficulty, they just give the player more reward. Same with map prefixes. They only increase rewards, while suffixes increase difficulty while giving map sustain. All of this heavily promotes the item rarity and movement speed meta to be the two best stats in the entire game. There isn't content hard enough to overcome, so the best strategy is just to build a good enough character and then invest in pure speed. Difficulty and rewards need to be tied to each other. There is no doubt in my mind of that. Secondly, another huge problem is the map clearing requirement. In order to clear a map on your atlas, you are required to kill every rare mob on the map. This sounds decent in theory, right? Okay, I need to interact with the entire map, explore, clear out the monsters. This ends up being a massive content gate for build diversity, as well as the fact that not every map has a map boss. Because of this, the map completion requirement, you can't make a build specifically good at a certain mechanic that is less good at an alternate mechanic. Every build is required to still be good at speed clearing maps, no matter what, as you must do that to progress your atlas and to reach the next tower and to enter the news and to enter a new map. Let's say you build a character super strong for clearing expeditions. In PoE 1 you could customize your experience to run a ton of expeditions and not be punished for it. You could do the expedition, maybe kill the map boss, and boom. That's it. You aren't forced into a redundant gameplay loop. You can change it up at any time with a different strategy, and each one will have pros and cons depending on your build. In the expedition case, This would allow you to not have to super heavily invest into mobility, as it would not benefit you as much as someone running Delirium and Beyond, for example. I think this homogenizes gameplay in PoE 2 and strategies, such that people will get really sick of it in the long term. In my opinion, PoE 1 already solved this problem by allowing people to do the content they wanted to do and not the content they don't want to do. In this regard, the current PoE 2 system feels like a bit of a regression, and this leads into my third point, which is the mechanics that are currently in the game, Delirium, Beyond, Breach, even Ritual to some extent, heavily incentivize speed clearing, such that even in order to complete them, you need a fast character. There's literally a timer associated with them, at least with some of them. This double dips with the map completion requirement, and we see that so much player agency is lost. You need a character that can do these things, and the only scaler is how fast they can do them, not how difficult they can do them. In my opinion, the endgame progression systems just need a ton of work. Looking at the Atlas passive skill tree, for example, we can see a couple of nodes. Here's one called Likely Ambush. Your maps have a plus 10% chance to contain a strong box. Here's another one, Bountiful Bloodlines. 25% increased magic monsters in your maps. In my opinion, these nodes aren't even close. One is so much better than the other one, it's not even remotely close. And there's another node, for example, that gives you 15% increase to rare monsters in your maps. This is just flat out better than 0.1 strong boxes per map. Even if this number was 2 strong boxes per map, you could make the argument that the 15% increase to rare monsters would be better. Here's another example. This node says 10% increased number of total monster packs in your maps, while this other node says your maps have a 10% chance to contain an essence, also known as your maps have 0.1 essences. This is just not even a comparison. The balance is the orders of magnitudes off. You would always take the 10% increased number of monster packs over 0.1 essences. You'd even take the 10% monster packs over 1 essence per map in all likelihood. It's just so incredibly not balanced. At the end of the day though, the balance isn't really the real issue. I'm talking about it in a general state of the game type of way, and things that need to be changed. But in reality, lots of these nodes are non-interesting. We need real ways to juice mechanics, like essence and strong boxes on our atlas. In fact, I would say that strong boxes, shrines, essences, and beyond all need to have trees, either as part of the main atlas or as separate trees like the other league mechanics. Not only would it help a ton with content variety and difficulty scaling if done well, not only would it allow for more player choice in the content they would like to do, but it would also help remedy many of the crafting issues. I have another opinion that if essences, omens, and expedition were all drastically buffed, as they should be, then a large amount of the crafting system complaints would quiet down. There are crafting mechanics in the game, they're just so scarce / worthless, they effectively don't really exist at the moment. I just really want ways to juice up the content on our maps, to increase the difficulty, but also to increase the rewards for a sense of progression and a real meaningful character progression past tier 15 maps. I think it's super important for replayability to be able to make characters for specific purposes. For example, to be able to farm essences or to farm strong boxes effectively. And the emphasis on speed clearing really diminishes that aspect of the game, and I think homogenizes content in the long term. This was a bit of a ranty style video, but make no mistake, I love this game. I wouldn't have put in 200 hours in a few weeks otherwise. That's why I think it's very important to give insightful criticism that gets to the core of the issues, and why I am feeling the way I am, and really analyzing why that's the case. The truth of the matter is, I'm just really not enjoying the endgame at the moment. It's the reason I have made 6 different characters already. When PoE 1, I typically made about 2 or 3 in an entire league. I'm super excited to see where GGG goes with PoE 2 in the future, and I hope they already understand a lot of the issues I brought up in this video. If you have any thoughts and disagreements, things you think I could do better, please leave them in the comments below, and I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much.